We're back for another full field preview. Don't let all the attention get pointed to Forte. There's another big race at Oaklawn this weekend. Matt and I look at the Arkansas Derby. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Trust the Profits YouTube page. My name is Colin Sheehan, joined once again by Matthew DeSantis. This is our full field run through or full field preview, early preview of the Arkansas Derby, and all those Sunland live reaction viewers are going to be checking in, Matt, to see who we like in the Arkansas Derby. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. In this Arkansas Derby, I think is actually a much better field overall than what we see down in Florida for the Florida Derby this week. We alluded to that on the first look that we did last night for the Florida Derby. And I'm excited about this field. I think there's a lot of interesting dynamics. And here's the best thing, especially for the folks of Hot Springs, Arkansas, it's not going to rain on Saturday. So it's actually going to get a Derby prep in Arkansas that's not in the slop. We might actually get a little bit of a different evaluation of how these horses are going to run as a result.
And it may suit my top pick a lot better, who was had some trouble in the slop last time, if you want to call it that. Yeah. So yes, of course. So that's what I love about this time is you have unique perspectives on why you're tuning into a race. So you said this race obviously is going to be a lot more competitive. We'll get to that in a little bit. That doesn't demean from what's happening in Florida. You're just approaching those races differently because in Florida, all eyes are on Mr. Forte.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that race is exciting for its own reasons. I think there are some people who think they can maybe beat Forte with a horse like Mage, and that's exciting because you can get a price. If you can get around Forte, you're going to get a huge price up top. And if Forte runs the race we think he's capable of, then that's exciting too, because that might be the number one Derby contender then. So either way is going to be exciting. Arkansas is just a much more even field. We've seen this circuit in particular this year turn out some really nice horses and some really nice races. So very impressed by what's been going on at Oaklawn Park over the last few months.
Yeah, and over the last few years, we'll see what's happened in the previous Arkansas Derbies. We talked about how the Florida Derby is always kind of that, this is where the winners come from. But look back, you had Cyberknife last year, all the way down to American Pharaoh 2015. I gave a little schneid at the Florida Derby being presented by Curlin. Well, the Arkansas Derby was the race that my boy Curlin came out of. What sticks out to you on this list as you look back to the last couple of winners?
Yeah, I mean, obviously no really kind of great horses, but I will say I think Cyberknife is starting to turn things around a little bit. Obviously a very solid 3-year-old campaign, winner of the Haskell as well. So, was a very good horse in his own right. So, I think there's a lot of things that you can look at there to also just to evaluate the fact that the picture changes every year. I think that's one of the things we can take away from this is every year the circuits are a little bit different. This year, California has been thrown into a little bit of a flux because of the Baffert suspension and some horses also getting injured. I think the New York circuit's particularly weak this year. And so I think a lot of people have looked at this Oaklawn circuit, the Fairgrounds circuit, as really the two strongest circuits that we have right now. Maybe not in terms of top-end talent, but certainly in terms of just a breadth of quality horses.
Yeah, it feels like over the last couple of years, the river is rising in those two circuits and really catching up. What stands out to me on that is what you just said on this list is the name Bob Baffert 3 times, which will maybe have an impact on this year's race.
Sure.
Speaking of this year's race, we have a field of 11 with your morning line favorite, number 8, Reincarnate. This is one of those bad Bob Baffert horses that has been moved into the Tim Yak Team Barn, your 5-2 morning line favorite. What is your first impressions of the field?
Yeah, I think first impressions just really solid throughout that you have. I mean, and I think it's reflected in the morning line that you have Red Route 1 at 3-1, Reincarnate at 5-2, Rocket Can at 4-1, Angel of Empire at 9-2. These are all outstanding horses. Angel of Empire coming out of winning the Risen Star last time out. Reincarnate third at the Rebel, Rocket Can second at the Fountain of Youth, Red Route 1 second at the Risen Star. I mean, these are really good horses that have strong pedigrees. And I think there's some interesting value plays underneath as well. But it is, I think, as strong of a field top to bottom as we might have seen to this point, maybe even better than the Louisiana Derby that we saw last week.
Angel of Empire is your only horse returning from a Graded Stakes win. Now, some of the other ones have Graded Stake wins, but the last time out, Angel of Empire, as you mentioned, is the one that's coming off of that big race. Also the only horse for Brad Cox in here. And what kind of popped out to me was you have a really nice spread of trainers. You're not just seeing the
Hmm.
same names over and over again. You have two from the Steve Asmussen barn, but otherwise it's pretty well spread out.
You're right about that. And you see some local Oaklawn trainers, a trainer like Chris Hartman, who is winning everything at Oaklawn Park, winning, I think, at about a 32% clip at this meet. Obviously, Robertino Diodoro, huge name at Oaklawn Park. But then you see, D. Wayne's got a horse running. D. Wayne's got a horse in the fantasy that ran literally 10 days ago that's going to be running again. I mean, that guy just loves running his horses. You got Kenny McPeak in there, Bill Mott shipping in. So, yeah, you're right. It's a nice cross section. Obviously, Keith DeSormo as well. So, nice cross section of trainers and jockeys. And I think that's an interesting dynamic as well, because Oaklawn is a track that can be a little bit interesting to play. And I think it can be a little bit of a mind game for jockeys, because the middle move is something that's actually quite beneficial at Oaklawn Park. So that's something that can be a little bit of a death knell at other tracks.
And haven't gotten a huge tip of the hand here. The one jockey change we do have is Johnny V getting off the number 3 Harlow cap and moving to Reincarnate. But I don't know that I would call that like this is a big, this is giving us a tip. I think Reincarnate, or I'll tell you my surprise, is Reincarnate's the best horse that is coming out of that Baffert barn, not named Arabian Night.
Yeah.
But I don't know that you can look into that too much, but there is that change. And I continue to talk about that's the storyline that we want to pay attention to, is where are the jockeys going?
Now, you're absolutely right. I do think that change is notable, but I think it's interesting. Ricardo Santana Jr. should fit Harlow Cap pretty well, though, in terms of the horse's running style and what Ricardo does best, which is send. Harlow Cap's going to be forwardly placed. Santana's, argue, a better jockey when he's on a horse like that. Think of his success on Echo Zulu and things along those lines. You get a horse that's out on the lead with Ricardo aboard. That's a much better place to be for him than weaving through traffic, I think.
And we talked about this last time Red Route 1 ran, but that is a place where you maybe want to pick up a little bit of a tip, where you got Tyler Gaffleon running for Steve Asmussen on Red Route 1, as opposed to Santana. Santana's ridden Red Route 1, easy for me to say, 3 times, finished second in the Southwest, actually finished third in the Breeders' Futurity with Santana aboard. Tyler Gaffleon has only ridden once, and that was the 4th in the Kentucky Jockey Club to Instant Coffee. So, something to just note and kind of stick in the back of the mind and watch the antics or the style that they run. As you've talked about, you don't prefer Santana on a horse that's closing like that, whereas Tyler maybe fits it better.
Yeah, I think Tyler, Tyler's a really good turf jockey. And so, he's used to riding horses that are coming from the back, I think. And you see that at Gulfstream Park a lot. I think he fits the horse well. Red Route 1 is he's going to run his race one way or the other. He's a little bit of a one-note horse, no matter who's aboard of him. And he's got a great late kick. So we'll see what happens in this race, and we'll see the way things might play out from a standpoint of pace.
Some of these prep races that we've done, we have talked about pace, and we've talked about how some of them have had a lot of early pace, which is set up for some closers. And then we've had other races where we're going, there is no pace. And maybe you're going to get a horse like King's Barnes that'll just go out and say, see you later. I feel like in this race, we have a really good mix, probably off the top of my head, the best mix I can remember of horses that will be forwardly placed versus horses that are going to be coming late. As we talked about, Red Route 1 will be coming late. Angel of Empire, Interlock Empire, I have written down as a horse coming late.
Yeah.
And then some of the horses on the front end, Harlow Cap, Two Eagles River, Reincarnate, in Airtime. Is that how you see it? And how do you kind of use that angle when it's this cloudy?
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I think in some ways I probably devalue closers when I see a race like this, because I go, they're not going to get it's going to be an honest pace, but it's not going to be an aggressive pace, I don't think. And you wonder, can Red Route 1 close into something like this? We obviously just saw last weekend at the Louisiana Derby, Instant Coffee, when he doesn't get the setup, wasn't able to close the way that he normally does. Question is, will Red Route 1 be able to overcome what might be a solid but not overwhelming pace? This is not going to be like the Rebel. This is not going to be like the Risen Star, where they're going at a breakneck pace up front. I think nobody needs the lead in this race. I think that's the other thing, is you look at the past performances and you look at, where they are at the first call, second call, third call. You don't see a lot of horses that are just 1-1-1-1-1 every single race. There's versatility. There are some horses that can wire the field, but they've also demonstrated the ability to sit third or fourth sometimes and still win. So I think it's a race where I'm probably looking at horses that are going to be positioned a little bit more forwardly, as having a little bit better of a chance in this one.
Yeah, and I'll go back to that point on Red Route 1, and I'll try and explain this. I should have grabbed the picture for everybody, but on Brisnet, they give you a plus or a minus from 0 that tells you how fast the race was as far as pace on those particular days. So if you are a closer and you see a pace number of a positive 10, 11, 12, 13, that means it was a really fast pace and easy to close into, which sets up nice for someone like Red Route 1. In the 4 races that Red Route 1 has a first, 2 seconds, and a third, the positive numbers were 6, 10, 19, and 14. So that tells you that exactly to your point, that he's done really, really well when the pace up front has been fast. Now, in the races where he finished 5th, and 4th, it was minus 13, plus 3, and minus 16. So when you're looking at the paper, it just proves exactly what your eyes saw and what you said, or maybe you were looking at the paper too. But I'm just backing you up and saying that Red Route 1 is really going to have to show something different. He's everyone's. He was mine too. Like, watch out for this horse closing.
Yeah.
But he's now going to face a different dynamic, which could affect him negatively.
Yeah, I think so. And I think there's obviously horses like a Two Eagles River and a Harlow Cap that are going to be a little bit more forwardly placed. But those horses, again, have some versatility. So I don't think you're going to see a speed duel emerge. I don't think that you're going to see what happened at the Sunland Derby emerge, where 2 horses just go at each other, whether or not the birds trip the timer for the first quarter of a mile or not. I don't think they're going to go 1:10.3 for the opening 3/4 of a mile in this race at all and open things up. I think they're going to set, like 24, 48, 112 type of fractions, like, pretty normal, what you would expect from a typical horse race. So, if that's the case, Red Route 1's going to have his work cut out for him, because it's, again, a large field. He's going to have to weave around a lot. Now, one thing to point out is he does get the blinkers put on this race. So that is a notable change for him. And clearly something that Asmussen realizes is that he's got to be more forwardly placed. He's got to be a little bit closer. He can't be so far back at first and second call. So it'll be interesting to see if he does sit any closer to the pace now that he gets the blinkers on.
Speaking of Wild on Ice, they did pay the $6,000 nomination fee today for the Kentucky Derby. So although not deciding yet if he's going to go, they said that he ate a huge breakfast this morning, came out looking pretty good, but they're going to give it some time. But they at least did put up that money, which is a pretty cool story. And the jockey I read was 60 years old. So that would be pretty awesome. Amazing. If he stays on. That's the kind of story you look for on those Derby days, where you get something like that.
Absolutely.
So let's take a look at the Brisnet Prime Power numbers. We're not sponsored by Brisnet, but I like to give a sense of how closely matched the field is. And that maybe gives you some feelings on if you should go for a long shot or not, or maybe why to play our value play, because, hey, look at the field. It's pretty close. Your top horse is Rocket Can, let's say 142. You go down quite a few horses to even get to 132. So this is showing you that we once again, in comparison to what we showed on the Florida Derby preview, where Forte had a 13-point lead or difference, whatever you want to call it, in the prime power numbers. And that really kind of lends to let you understand that Forte is that big of expected to win. But here we have a really tightly packed group. So you probably could find some prices and you can make a case for a lot of horses.
I think so. I think this is a great betting race. I think this is a great betting race in a lot of different ways. If you just want to put your flag in the ground and say, I'm betting on Angel Empire, I'm betting on, Two Eagles River, or I'm betting on, Bourbon Bash or something like that, you're going to get a price. You're going to get a really nice price. Similarly, if you want to put together an exacta trifecta, you're going to get some bombs, I think, in this. I mean, even if you like one of those shorter priced favorites up top, there's a lot of opportunity to make some money in this race, I think. So it's an exciting race in that regard. And it's also just a super competitive race. And I think it might add a little bit more clarity to this particular group of horses as it relates to the Kentucky Derby, because we might actually start to separate the wheat from the chaff a little bit and be able to go, oh, okay, that horse really is that good. That horse is really pace dependent. Oh, that horse does need the lead, things like that. I think we'll be able to take a lot more out of this race than one, to your point at the very beginning, that either has all the pace or none of the pace.
My boy Jack Edwards, voice of the Boston Bruins, as the Bruins beat the Whalers this weekend, said, let's cut the the blubber off the whale and fry it. So let's get to it, Matt. Where are you going with who you like in this race?
Yeah, so I went in a couple of different directions here. I mentioned to you that I thought horses that are going to be more forwardly placed are where I ultimately want to go. And so I ended up on Rocket Can as my top choice for Bill Mott with Junior Alvarado aboard. I like this horse a lot. I mean, this horse has finished in the exacta the last 4 times out, won the Holy Bull, came back, finished second to Forte in the Fountain of Youth. And honestly, that was a really strong second place effort. You also saw increasing speed figures that next time out. You know, a lot of people made a point of how slow the Holy Bull was. That race was off the bench for him, almost a 3.5-month break, then comes back and increases his speed figure to a 91 next time out. I think he's going to sit the right type of trip. He's probably going to sit third behind a horse like Harlow Cap and Two Eagles River, and then be able to make his move late. I think he's got the distance that he can handle. I like what he's doing here, and he's faced the best competition there is in the field.
I can't disagree with you. I've come down to kind of 2 horses, and it's Rocket Can is one of the ones I'm high on. I kind of like Angel of Empire, but for me, I'm going to go with number 8, Reincarnate, my opportunity to try and make a little bit back from what happened last time in the Rebel, where this horse started horribly, was 11 lengths behind, 9 1/4 lengths behind by the first call. First time in the slop coming back from California, didn't know what it was like to run in a conditions like that. And remember, when you're 9 lengths behind, you're taking all the kickback.
Yeah,
you know, in a field of 11, there's no like, well, he was on front, he just maybe didn't like the slop. It was he was facing all those conditions. He was checked up as well at the 8th pole when they came back around. I think if this horse can get a clean trip, I do think he's a really solid horse. Sired by Good Magic, which I always love, by my boy Curlin. We'll just keep talking about Curlin as much as we can. Out of a dam, Scat Daddy. As I said, Johnny V gets the ride again. He's ridden Reincarnate really well. I know that this is the Baffert moving to Yak Team, which I know Matt is not a fan of and is a easy angle to play against. However, I think there's 2 horses from West Coast that you want to pay attention to. It's Practical Move and it's Reincarnate. And I'm going to find out how that West Coast matches up against the East Coast. And if this horse can just get a much better trip, I think he would have taken down the Rebel that day personally if he didn't, start the way that he did. As you said about Red Route 1, who did finish ahead of Reincarnate, I agree with you that let's see him close into a race where there isn't as much pace. That's a great point by you on the blinkers. But I'm going against what I believe in, which is when you have a list of prime power numbers that are so close, don't take the favorite. And I'm terrible at picking favorites and not picking favorites. I'm okay putting that out there. But I just have been on Reincarnate for a bit, especially since that effort in the Sham. You've got a great price at 16 to 1 in that race. Dueled really well against Newgate, National Treasure. You got Fort Bragg, who we ran competitively with. Fort Bragg is coming over to run against Forte. So I'm not sure the time. Which goes off first? I think this race goes off first before Florida, right?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
This is 650. They're going to be really close.
Yeah,
we're going to be busy. We're going to be busy. You may miss this race.
Yeah, I know. I'll be at the Florida Derby trying to pull this up on my TVG account to watch this in real time. But yeah, no, all the points you made about Reincarnate are totally fair, and I think he has every excuse to improve over that. Every opportunity to improve over that last effort, because you're right, everything went wrong. There, the surface was terrible. It was obviously the barn change had just happened as well, and then he breaks terribly. He everything kind of goes wrong for him. And he still sucks it up and finishes a hard driving third. Again, there was a super strong pace that day, but he's normally a horse that's much more forwardly placed, and I will be interested to see whether or not he is where he decides to go. I think that's an interesting question, because now that he's figured out that he can come from the back, do they kind of take more of a mid-pack, they don't want to fall too far back, but do they take more of a mid-pack approach? Do they stalk, like basically with Rocket Can kind of sitting behind maybe the 2 expected leaders? Where do they go? Where do they want to place this horse? Because he's shown a little bit more versatility now, which I think is a good thing in the grand scheme of things. But I definitely like Reincarnate a lot. No problems with that it being your top pick at all. And it's one of those things where it's too bad that he is the morning line favorite, because
Yeah.
it does feel like, coming off a bad effort, you go, oh, maybe I can get a price in this next race, because he had a troubled trip, but didn't work out that way. But we'll see how the board ends up shaking out when it comes to post time.
You talked exactly what I think is going to be important this year when we talked about how closely matched all these horses are, is versatility.
Yeah.
Horses that can come from off the pace, horses maybe that can be forwardly placed, which is why Forte's been extremely impressive.
Yeah.
So you have to keep that in mind when you are looking at this.
Yeah.
So we gave our top picks, and look, I'm wearing the same shirt in my picture. It's like I took the picture and I'm live after that, but it's not. But where are we going for our value pick?
So my value pick, I really wanted to go with Two Eagles River, but I was a little worried. If you look at the stats for Chris Hartman, only 3 for 24 when switching horses off Lasix. I think that's actually a statistic you want to look up when you're handicapping this race. There's a lot of horses that ran on Lasix last time out and have traditionally been running on Lasix, now switching off. A trainer like Ken McPeak is notoriously bad switching horses off of Lasix, only 4%. So, those are things to keep in mind. As a result, I'm actually going to go with, you mentioned one former Bob Baffert horse. I'll go with the other. I'm going to go with Harlow Cap, the number 3 horse for Steve Asmussen. He was a horse that just was a product of that crazy pace in the Risen Star, where they were all trying to fight out super fast fractions. I think, yes, there's going to be some contention with him and Two Eagles River, but I think they're going to carve out much better fractions. I think Asmussen's going to get this horse ready. It's been some nice workouts, 15-1 on the morning line. I really like what Harlow Cap has to offer here, so I'm going to use him as my value play.
I hate when you start off by saying, all the negatives on Two Eagles River of why you're not going to pick him. And then I say, I'm going to pick Two Eagles River as my value pick.
Well, to be fair, there's only one negative on Two Eagles River. Otherwise, I love everything about him. And I think that speed figure last time out is legit.
Yeah, so what I liked about Two Eagles River, sired by Cloud Computing, the average winning distance, 7.1 furlongs. Yep. We're going 1 1/8, so I don't think the distance is going to be a problem. But I tried to play a little bit of the who's he been against lately. So let's look at some of these names. Disarm, Verifying, Gun Pilot, Victory Formation only lost by a neck, although that was in November. Lugan Knight. Those are some big names that you've seen on here, and this horse has held his own. So I think that Two Eagles River might be flying a little bit under the radar. If he can get back to that first race when he put up 104 Brisnet speed figure, then came back with 95, 95, 85, and then a 96. Hopefully he's trending in the other direction. In Two Eagles River with the Chris Hartman angle of, I talked about this on our Sunland Live reaction, and we talked about Wild Atlantic Storm in the Springboard Mile, and then you had Wild on Ice at the Sunland Derby. There's a little bit of that home field advantage that plays into some of these, and that's the prices where if there's an angle I'm going to look at for a price, it's tracks like that where you have a horse that's either been running a lot or maybe the trainer that really is doing well there.
I like it, and I'll just say, for Two Eagles River's case, the horse he beat last time out is Disarm. Disarm's the horse that really, I thought, outside of Kingsbarns had the best. I mean, he finished second, but he also was the only horse to really make up any ground on Kingsbarns, quite frankly, in that Louisiana Derby. And from a buyer speed figure standpoint, here's the nice thing that can give you some assurance that last speed figure that Two Eagles River ran was legit, was Disarm went from an 84 to a 90 based upon that effort against Two Eagles River to the Louisiana Derby. So he improved off of that last effort. I would expect Two Eagles River to run another really solid race. The Lasix thing just has me a little worried, but definitely for the price, totally worth taking a shot. Love it.
All right, let's reincarnate. Let's get him in the winner's circle. Matt's heading down to the Florida Derby with El Hombre. If you are there, please stop by and say hello. Please. What else we got coming this week, Matt?
We got a Kentucky Oaks countdown that's coming out. We got Capping the Card that's going to come out. We got, obviously, we already did the Florida Derby preview, but later on Tuesday, there's going to be a video dropping here on Trust the Profits that is all about a donation campaign that we're going to be doing here at Trust the Profits, trying to give back to off-track thoroughbreds in the days leading up to the Kentucky Derby. Make sure to check that out. As much as we love horses, as much as we love betting, we also love giving back and protecting the animals that really make this sport so wonderful.
Absolutely, and I'll be joining you in that endeavor as well. It's always good to care for a lot of those barns that need the support. So your money's going to a good place. They're not raking it in, as they say, and they need that in order to bring in more horses in their aftercare, because that is so important. Speaking of aftercare, did you see Cross Border win the steeplechase race?
I did, and I have to give a shout out to my very good friend from college, Lee Bennett, who was actually at the steeplechase race and saw Cross Border win. And I'm not going to say that I might have texted him some advice, but I did tell him, I said, any horse trained by Kerry Byron, make sure to bet on. And he texted me back. He goes, man, you really know your horse trainers. I said, yes, I do. I know one thing in steeplechase, which is Kerry's got great horses.
It was awesome to see. I always love Cross Border. And Trusty made a good point. Maybe he can come back and win one of those at Saratoga.
That'd be awesome.
Which would be really cool to see.
Yeah.
That'll do it for this episode of your preview for another Kentucky Derby prep race. Please like and subscribe. It means so much to us. And stay tuned. And Matt, until next time.
It's now post time.